Breaking down the Michigan offense for 2021, we got Justin Rowe on the line from Stadium in Maine podcast as we, of course, head toward August camp. Justin, all right, let's start at the quarterback position. We've got three in play, and they all have a different approach or angle to the starting job. Of course, Cade McNamara is the guy that caught everybody's attention with the big comeback win against Rutgers where he lit it up. J.J. McCarthy's the five-star that everybody wants to eventually see, if not in week one. And then you got Alan Bowman with the most experience coming in from Texas Tech.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And for, I think this is one of the positions that has the most pressure on them. Obviously, the quarterback position always is going to be that way. But when Jim Harbaugh is your coach and when you haven't had too many quarterbacks pan out or be that guy, that true guy, that's going to back you into a corner here. And so I believe that Cade McNamara is going to be the day one starter. He did show enough last year, and I think he's talented enough. He's kind of the safer bet than J.J. McCarthy, who is going to be an unbelievable talent. And we've talked about it before on here. We all know that everyone's going to be calling for him as soon as Cade, throws one interception. And so it'll be interesting. He's shown some unbelievable film out there during some camps and some workouts in this summer. And so I think he may work his way into that spot at some point if Cade does struggle, but I think it's good. It's going to be good, healthy competition for those quarterbacks there that JJ is going to push them. And then the wild card is Alan Bowman, as you mentioned, transfer from Texas Tech, who threw up some really solid numbers down there in the Big 12 last year. And so now, he's been out there saying, hey, I'm not here to come and hang out. I'm here to play. And so he's come out and said it in some interviews that saying there's no, Cade might be here, JJ might be here, but guess what? I'm here. I've got plenty of experience and I'm ready to play day one if my name is called. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I would see it as right now it's Cade, JJ, and Alan Bowman. But, I could definitely see if JJ has some freshman mistakes like we actually did see in the spring game, Alan Bowman can make his way in there if Cade drops it, if he falters towards the beginning of the season.
I watch a ton of college football, but I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what Alan Bowman's capable of. I see the stats. Have I seen him throw a pass in my life? Yes. I've probably seen him throw 10 or 15 or 20, but am I watching Texas Tech play football week to week? No. I don't think anybody out there is outside of Lubbock, Texas. So 67%, 33 TDs, 17 picks. But the one concerning, now this is understandable, and this is going to be the case with any player. You're going to beef up your stats against the lesser opponents. That's all there is to it. It's obvious. But I think there is a pretty significant drop-off. Not that he didn't have good games against Big 12 opponents, but he really racked up some huge yardage and TD totals against some FCS / group of five teams out of conference.
Well, some people may say he fits right in at Michigan then. I think that with Michigan quarterbacks have shown that they do well. There's a certain name that a lot of Spartans have out there for Michigan quarterbacks, and that's the September Heisman. Going back to Denard Robinson and Tate Forcier and go on down the list. And so, if that is how it is, maybe he does see some time in the beginning and can show some decent playing time there. But it'll be interesting. I'm with you. I don't know a ton about him, and I don't think anybody does, and so we can go watch the film, but I think it's still tough to compare the Big 12 to really any other conference. They air it out so much, and it's not, you got to run the ball in the Big 10 still, even when you're running the spread option. And so it's very different football down south compared to up in here in the Midwest.
Now, if there's one guy that I will put on the field against any opponent, it's Hassan Haskins. He's been mighty impressive for 2 years, 6+ yards per carry, 6 touchdowns. Obviously, he's the headliner at running back. Be interesting to see if Donovan Edwards works his way in. Then you got the use of Blake Corum.
Yeah, it's quite the trio. And, the biggest problem that Michigan had with their running back room in 2020 was not knowing who to give the ball to. There is a lot of Zach Charbonnet had a 70-yard run for a touchdown in game one, and then saw, I think, 9 total touches for the rest of the year. So, Josh Gaddis really struggled with making sure that everybody could get some touches, and then I ultimately finding his probably 1-2 punch. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I do believe Hassan Haskins is going to get that, number one spot, but is it going to be Blake Corum? Is it going to be Donovan Edwards? Is it going to be a combo of the both to combine for that second punch? But I think that's where Josh Gaddis has gotten in trouble. Now, Blake Corum put out a picture the other day of himself on his Twitter. He is jacked. That dude is big, and he's little, but he's a bowling ball. And so it'll be interesting to see how he, puts in. He's got a lot of speed and quickness, and now if he can add some power to that, that makes things a lot differently. And back to Hassan Haskins, we talked about this before. He was a 3-star linebacker coming in. So I do laugh a little bit about the people that put all their marbles into recruiting and not into player development. You never know what can happen with these guys coming in. And now he's going to be, really a huge piece to Michigan. And I actually see him breaking out, possibly making a jump to the NFL after the season. And then, what you said for the third guy there, Donovan Edwards. I mean, we watched him in high school, and man, that kid can move. He does have the power along with the speed. And so I think he'll work his way into the lineup a little bit, but I would bet that he sits more than Blake and Hassan. And then he'll be kind of that third down running back sometimes and come in certain situations. But they want to make sure that they do have a good 1-2 punch and have a good rhythm there, so that these guys can start seeing the field and can get some vision there.
Corum only caught 5 passes last year, but I get the feeling that, and from reading various spots, that he's the type of guy that they could move around the formation and create some things for him in space.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh Gaddis has really he's started to be creative with that slot position, and he's got a lot of small slot receivers that we'll talk about here in a second that are faster than heck. But I think when you put Blake Corum in that slot position, and all of a sudden you got a linebacker on Blake Corum out in the open space, that's a matchup nightmare for some defenses out there, and I'd love to see Josh Gaddis take advantage of that.
Got Justin Rowe on the line from Stadium in Maine podcast covering Michigan football. We're breaking down the offense. We would ask that you would like the videos, share the videos out on social media, because if you take it in, others will as well, and they'll enjoy it just like you. So share the videos, and please subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. All right, Ronnie Bell's a given. He's the rock. 82 catches career. Cornelius Johnson caught 16 last year and 3 touchdowns. So those are the guys that people know about. Kind of round out, as I've got a list of names in front of me, as you just kind of alluded to, of guys that we could be completely disappear or could become major factors on this team.
Yeah, it's Ronnie Bell as the old hat and the young boys, and so it really is. We'll have to see how it plays out, but they're going to lean on Ronnie to be that senior leader, to be that guy that is rallying the troops, and he showed that. There have been times where not one person on that field has looked like they wanted to be there or had fire out there. And then Ronnie Bell's the one guy that's getting people going. So I'm really excited to see Ronnie Bell take that in even more of a leadership role and get the ball even more than he has. And then, from there, what you've said, Cornelius Johnson, AJ Henning, Christian Dixon, Andrell Anthony, the freshman, all those guys are going to contribute on the outside. And then when you look at the slot, you've got Mike Sainristil and Roman Wilson who are going to come in. That I see this rotation really maybe being 5, 6, 7 deep of guys coming in different packages and different things. These are the guys that Josh Gaddis talked about when he came in saying speed and space. He's got the speed. They've got to make the space now for him and get the ball out of the quarterback's hands and into their hands. And so, any of these guys can step in and probably do a lot of the routes, the short routes, and those little out routes and in routes and all those things that Josh Gaddis is working on. And so there may be some breakout guys there, but I see a pretty deep rotation for the wide receivers.
All right, Talking Michigan Football, Stadium in Maine podcast is where you can catch Justin Rowe. Also, you see his Twitter handle there, Justin Rowe 92. All right, are they still going to employ a tight end? They must there at Michigan. Jim Harbaugh loves the tight ends.
Jim Harbaugh does love the tight ends, and so does Sherrone Moore, who I alluded to earlier, who was the tight end coach and now the offensive line coach. And so Eric All is going to be the guy for the tight end position at Michigan. And so Jim Harbaugh has come out already at the end of last year saying Eric All could be possibly the most talented tight end he's ever had. Now, Eric All dropped some passes last year. He had some great moments, but he was young. He's going to be a junior now. I believe that Eric All could probably be the most improved player on Michigan's offensive side of the ball. And so I think they're going to try and get him the ball a ton. He's a lean, he's fast, he's very mobile for as big as he is. And so I can see him, being one of Cade McNamara's main targets down the stretch here, as that wide receiver rotation gets jumbled up sometimes with maybe too many guys, too many cooks in the kitchen, I can see Eric Hall as being, a guy that he goes to again and again and again and keeps finding and can make those big catches when they need him on 3rd and 4th down.
Eric Hall caught 12 last year for 82 yards, probably more production out of him in 21. All right, now on to the guys that make it all happen, because they create the space, they push the line of scrimmage, they make it happen, even though we tend to forget about their names. 2 starters are back. Transfer to Indiana was somewhat unexpected. Your thoughts about the offensive line and how that sets up?
I think this is everybody's biggest worry. The offensive line is the one that is probably the biggest question mark and had the most struggles in 2020. And so, with those two combinations, it usually doesn't bode well. I think Sherrone Moore is going to help a lot. Michigan's going from Ed Warner, who did a lot with a little with some of the guys that he worked with over the past 5 years. And now Sherrone Moore is the new offensive line coach here. But I do think that there's a couple of those leaders that are vets in the locker room that can help out. And there are going to be some young guys that step up. And so, Vistardis, I don't know if he will end up being the starter. He was a former walk-on that got some playing time because of some injuries and some transfers and things like that. But he could possibly be the starting center. I could also see, Ryan Hayes being that senior leader at left tackle. Michigan's going to need that left tackle position because we need these quarterbacks to be super comfortable in what they're doing. And so this offensive line is really that important. So, I see it as Ryan Hayes, Trevor Keegan, Andrew Vistardis, Zach Zinter, and then Andrew Stuber. And so, it's going to be interesting how that pans out. I think there may be some changes made. I would expect some changes to be made in the first few weeks as we see things pan out, and maybe some young guys getting some love here. I know Carson Barnhart has definitely showed some good things in the spring and here in the summer, and so is Nolan Rumler. And so I think this is, you can probably tell in the way I'm talking that it's not very, set in stone. It's really all over the place here with the offensive line. This is the one spot where I think Michigan doesn't really know which way to go, and they don't know who and what they have in this position group.
I'm going to point out one positive from the Michigan offense, in addition to Hassan Haskins and Ronnie Bell in 2020, and that's that the turnover rate was top 20 in the nation. So they only fumbled a couple times and only had 4 picks out of their quarterbacks. Of course, they only played half a season, but still the turnover rate percentage was top 20 in the nation. So they held on to the football. Now they got to come up with more consistency in moving the chains and, of course, explosive plays for this Michigan offense, and figure out who that guy's going to be, because they certainly don't want to be in October with a quarterback controversy.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the one thing that you touched on there that I think is probably the most important is explosive plays. That's something that Michigan, they haven't let it loose. They haven't thrown that deep ball over and over again. They haven't had the breakout run very often. And so I think Michigan fans, when they watch Michigan and it's, short, choppy, move it down the field a little bit or stall out, then they watch Ohio State or Indiana, and they're airing it out over and over again, and it's constant 25-plus yard plays. And so that's the thing. That's what college football is nowadays. There's Jim Harbaugh's offense of take 9 minutes, off the clock for one drive, chug it along, and win 21-7. That doesn't happen anymore. And so you have to be able to keep up with other offenses that can throw it down the field and put points on the board. And so that's the thing that I'm looking for Josh Gaddis to do, is break out that offense a little bit. Let these guys go, throw it deep. You've got guys in Caden McNamara and JJ McCarthy who have the arms to get it done. You've got the speed at the wide receiver position. You've got the speed at the running back position. Get them in their space and let them go and take some shots where, if you are too conservative, you're going to be left behind, left in the dust.
Much of success in sports is about calculated risks. So while it's a higher percentage pass, probably 75, 80% to throw it down in the flat or check it down to a running back for 4 yards versus 35% completion percentage once you throw it past 20, 25 yards. There's also a risk in staying on the field for 12 and 13 plays during a drive, because one penalty puts you behind the chains, one sack, one deflected pass at the line of scrimmage, it's picked off, the drive's over, as opposed to 3 plays, 75 yards, boom, we made it happen. We're in the end zone, touchdown.
Yeah, and I think the problem that Michigan saw before Josh Gaddis came to Michigan, it was more Jim Harbaugh's offense, right? And that's what they were doing, those 9-minute drives. And what happened was it worked really well as long as that defense held stout and held the other team to not so many points. As soon as they fell behind, there's no catching up. And so that was the big problem that Michigan saw, is anytime that they got down 14-7, 21-7, even if it's the second quarter, you could kind of call that the ball game. And so that's what Michigan's trying to change right now, and to be able to do, have those explosive plays, especially with a new defensive coordinator coming in. You can't bank on that defense being, strong, and it's not a Don Brown 2016 defense where you're giving up less than a touchdown a game anymore. It's a different defense. They're going to play the 3-4. They're going to get some more points scored on them, kind of a bend but don't break type defense. But you got to be able to catch up. That's just college football in 2021.
I took a call from somebody last night and wanted to clarify for them when we were talking about defense, and they basically said defense is not important anymore. It doesn't matter how you play defense. I said, no. You need to adjust your thinking. Defense is still important. Just the standard statistically of what a great defense is different than it was 10 years ago.
Right.
You're no longer going to have Alabama holding it teams to an average of 9 points per game like they did in 2009, but it's still just as important. Just if you hold them to 22, 25 points a game, then you're playing great defense still. It's just a different statistical landscape, but playing the defense is just as important.
It is. That's a common misconception too, that it's, you can let up 45 points as long as you score 49. Right. And so, I see that a lot. And so I think, I give Alabama a ton of credit, and Nick Saban there, for realizing that, he's realized, hey, we don't want to win. What was the LSU game that year? 9-3,
9-6.
I think.
Yeah.
9-6. Yeah. So we don't want to win that game 9-6 anymore. We want to win it 49, to 35 or something. And so Saban has brought that on. I'm looking for Harbaugh to do somewhat of the same. And so it'll be interesting to see how Mike McDonald, the new defensive coordinator for Michigan, takes that from the NFL and the Baltimore Ravens to Michigan, because the NFL is similar, especially when you're talking the Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. They score a lot of points. They also give up some decent points too. And so it'll be interesting to see how he comes into the fold and makes some changes or makes some cultural adjustments into how they view their defense, instead of trying to be, all right, we're going to beat you with one-on-one defense and never change anything, so we'll see how that goes.
Run it down this way. If you look at the last 4 national champions, yes, the defensive numbers are going to be compromised, but at the same time, Alabama gave up 14 and 24 in the playoffs last year. The year before, LSU gave up 28 to Oklahoma, and most of that was complete garbage because they were crushing them the entire game. Then they gave up 25 to Trevor Lawrence in the championship game. That's not a ton of points.
No.
The year before, Clemson gave up 3 to Notre Dame, and they gave up 16 to Alabama in the championship game. Alabama gave up 6 the year before to Clemson in the semifinal, then gave up 20 to Georgia in the championship game. Those are not huge scoring totals.
Yeah,
So
no,
if you can still play defense, you can play defense.
Exactly. And I think that's a focus there is, when they do need to, hunker down and try and get some stops, they're going to get some stops. And so I think that's the difference there, between the Alabamas and the Clemsons of the world, in a lot of the rest of the college football is, they can get stops against Army or against, Appalachian State I'll say that for the Michigan fans out there too. And so I think that's the difference is Alabama and Clemson can do it against the best of the best. Right. And when Nick Saban needs to go out there and have his defense play well, his defense plays well, and so that's where Michigan has to go from good to great. I think Michigan, we've talked about it, everyone rags on Harbaugh. He's been good. He's a solid college football coach. He's won 10 games in 3 out of his 6 or 7, 6.5 seasons, we'll call it, and so they need to make that jump from good to great, where instead of, those 3 games that you lose being by 30 points, you have to be close in those games. You can't go on the road and go down 35-0 to Wisconsin. You can't, in your season finale, lose to Ohio State 62-39, and so that's where Michigan has to make that step if they want to, take everything to the next level.
Good stuff. I ruined our offensive breakdown with all those defensive metrics, but Justin playing along with me here. Catch him on Stadium and Main podcast covering Michigan football. Justin, we appreciate you stopping by, breaking down the whole Michigan offense for us. Hopefully you can come back and do the defense.
Absolutely. We'll be back. Thanks for having me.